Today on Lawyers with Game, we're joined by Al Coleman, the head of the video gaming and esports practice at Saul Ewing, and we're going to be talking about loot boxes and Jordan versus Kobe. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lawyers with Game. If you're interested in learning more about legal issues in the world of esports and video games, you're in the right place. My name is Darius Gambino, and I am first and foremost a lifelong gamer. I've played on just about every home console, from the original Atari to the Sega Dreamcast to now the PlayStation 5. I'm also an intellectual property attorney with over 20 years of experience advising clients on issues related to patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I'm with the law firm of Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lehr in Philadelphia, and you can find me on Twitter as @PhillyIP. With me today is my colleague Al Coleman. Al and I are both members of the video gaming and esports group here at Saul Ewing. Al is actually the leader of our group, so we're really lucky to have him here today. Al represents collegiate conferences as well as esports and sports organizations. Al, maybe you can say a few words about your practice.
Well, Darius, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for that warm introduction. As you said, I'm Al Coleman. I'm a corporate partner here in our Minneapolis office of Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lehr. I have the privilege of chairing our sports and entertainment practice, which includes a robust esports advisory practice. Thrilled to be here and looking forward to a great discussion.
Absolutely. And I know you've told me in the past that video games are big in your household, including games like 2K and MLB The Show, right?
Yeah, they're huge. I've got a 14-year-old son. He rocks the Xbox Series S. So we spend a lot of nights and weekends together grinding out The Show, 2K21, and Injustice 2, which is, I think, a family fave as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great one. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. We hope to do a season 2 of this series in the near future. If you would like to know more about myself or Al, you can visit our law firm website at www.saul.com. If you're interested in a little bit of gaming, I am on the PlayStation Network and my gamer tag is EaglesFan71. Finally, please note that this series is intended to be a high-level discussion of video game legal issues. It is not intended as actual legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, please reach out to myself or Al. Our email addresses will be in the description. So today, we are going to be talking about a multitude of different legal issues in the video game space. It's kind of going to be like, pardon the interruption, for video games. We're going to be talking about loot boxes. We're going to be talking about gaming disorder as a mental health condition. We're going to be talking about retailer liability when it comes to selling hot items like video game consoles. And we're going to be talking about the rise of esports athletes and esports teams. But before we get into all that, Al, I read a long time ago that the best way to start a conversation with you is to ask you your opinion on Jordan versus LeBron. Is that right?
You heard right. Many have tried, all have failed. So feel free to take your shot, Darius.
Well, I'm not going to enter into a losing proposition there, so I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try to convince you today that Kobe is actually more the GOAT than Jordan or LeBron. And we've actually done a simulation on NBA 2K21. My son assisted me with this. I let him control Jordan and I controlled Kobe. And I won't ruin the outcome for you, but it will be playing while we're having the discussion. So we'll see what happens at the end. But I'd like to start with a couple of points that the great Nick Wright of Fox Sports first raised about Jordan. And it's 3 things. The first is Jordan's Bulls were a sub-500 team before Scottie got there, and Jordan never beat Larry Bird in the playoffs before Scottie. Number 2, Jordan, his playing career was 6 years, and in that time, there were only 2 all-stars out of the Eastern Conference. So he was beating up on a mediocre Eastern Conference. And 3, Jordan's playing career was 16 years in total. And we all like to pretend like he only played 6 years and he won the championship every year. But in reality, he won the championship 6 out of those 10 years, and other people won while he was in the league. So your thoughts on those points to start?
Well, Darius, you've made a very compelling argument. First and foremost, I mean, Kobe's a singular talent, so I don't think you're going to hear any one of us, kind of knocking him or ripping his legacy. He's one of a kind. Great athlete, great competitor, great champion. But, my first comment is, the student can't be better than the teacher, right? Anybody who's followed Kobe's career knows that he patterned his entire game, some would say his professional aura and demeanor after Jordan. The shot taking, the competitive fire, his walk literally into and out of the arena after Jordan. I mean, I could go on and on. But, what makes Jordan great isn't, I don't think you can make this analytical argument and go back and forth, which I will. I mean, you're a seasoned litigator, so you're adept at doing so and making great points. But you look at the intangibles, right? And for me, kind of the most special Jordan memory will be Game 6 of the '97 Finals, fourth quarter, final 3 minutes. I believe you can still find it on YouTube. But that is one of the greatest professional performances. His team's down. They're in Utah. If they lose, they're going to Game 7. That doesn't bode well. They're on the final legs of, back-to-back three-peats, which was well documented in The Last Dance. So there was a lot at stake. And in that 3 minutes, you saw Jordan's competitive fire. He scored the final 8 points. I think he pulled down 2 rebounds. I think caused at least 2 turnovers, one which was critical to get them, well, both were critical to keep them in the game and to take the lead. That's just Jordan in a nutshell. Then you look at what he meant to the league, right, and how he's single-handedly changed the NBA. I mean, prior to Jordan, you had to have a 6'10" or greater big man to win in the league. I mean, the league was built around the Olajuwons, the Ewings, the Birds, the McHales, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, et cetera, et cetera. After Jordan, it was built around guards, right? 6'6" guards. Right? We haven't even touched on his marketing prowess, how he became a global icon, how he took Nike from a no-name to a tour de force in marketing, in sports marketing, and athletics. I mean, that's just a hint of his greatness. And oh, by the way, he was undefeated 6 for 6 in NBA Finals with 6 Finals MVP. So continue on.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of student and teacher, I'm not going to pretend that Kobe is my favorite player of all time. It's Allen Iverson, without question. And Allen has always said that Jordan was his idol. And I don't think Allen, makes it into the league and becomes the star that he became without Jordan's influence. But the thing about there's a couple things about Kobe that I think are really interesting that I don't think a lot of people focus on. First, he had more 60-point games than anyone else in the NBA besides Wilt Chamberlain. He had an 81-point game, which we all know about. He played against a relatively difficult Western Conference when the Lakers were winning their championships. And he did, and I'm talking about players like Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, Tim Duncan. And he did it with a cast of characters in at least the last 2 championships without Shaq, guys like Luke Walton, Metta World Peace, and Andrew Bynum, of all people. And so the last thing is, I think, between Jordan and Kobe, The Last Dance showed us a lot about Jordan. I think it's something that we all suspected about Jordan's personality, his competitiveness, that led a lot of his teammates to really dislike him, even to this day. And while Shaq and Kobe had their differences while they were playing together, they seemed to have reconciled completely after their playing days were over. And I think that says a lot about Kobe's character. So that's all I have on it. I think we'll call this one a stalemate. What do you think?
Because we are friends and partners, I'll let that slide. But basically, you wrapped with, Kobe was a nicer guy than Jordan. So I'll let our viewers decide who won the take here, the debate, and we'll leave it at that. Friends can agree to disagree.
Sounds good. Okay, Al, now let's transition into a discussion of esports athletes and esports teams. About a week ago, FaZe Clan became the first esports organization to grace the cover of Sports Illustrated. And about a year ago, Ninja became the first esports athlete to be on the cover of ESPN, the magazine. The rise in popularity of athletes themselves and of teams is really increased a lot. So my question for you is, is this something that we're going to see continue? We've got not only just teams like FaZe Clan, but you have Cloud9, 100 Thieves, and a company that we represent here at Saul Ewing, Version 1. So what do you see for the future of esports athletes and esports teams?
Well, I think it's an excellent question, Darius. I think personally, when I saw, the SI cover with Bronny James and FaZe Clan, I really took notice. I sat up and, as you mentioned, we represent teams, we represent athletes in the space. But that to me was a major moment, if not watershed moment, simply because, for years, esports and esports athletes have been protesting that, this is, valid competition, that they are athletes to be taken seriously, and that correspondingly the marketing dollars should follow. So to have, an institution like Sports Illustrated give the cover to an esports team, that was huge. There's no two ways about it. And it continues to support what we're seeing not only in the marketplace, but what we're hearing from our clients, that there's growing demand, increasing exponentially, that's really driven by, all of the media forces, whether it's social media that's driving content and engagement, whether it's, sites and platforms like Twitch that help to keep, the teams and the players engaged and in front of a widely interested audience. We're seeing development in major capital improvements, esports arenas in Arlington, in Philadelphia. We have routine events being held here in Minneapolis, at the Barclays, at Staples. So all of this just continues to shine just an excellent light on, a great community that I think will continue to grow. You touched on the leagues. We've seen fantastic engagement from leagues such as, the Overwatch League, the Call of Duty League, the Rocket League. We have, friends, clients, and contacts who are participating in those leagues, and they're just seeing exponential growth. So all of this bodes well for the future of esports.
Yeah, I agree. And FaZe Clan is notable because it's become more of a lifestyle brand recently than anything else. And I think we might see that with a lot of other sports teams, just the same way that, I might wear a 76ers jersey or you might wear a Minnesota Timberwolves sweatshirt. The branding associated with these esports teams is permeating the culture, and fans are wearing the gear of these teams to support them, which I think is a really interesting next step in the evolution of esports.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think merchandise, in game and in the real world, if you will, merch paraphernalia, et cetera. All of that's going to be driving the interest, engagement, and excitement for years to come in esports.
Definitely. So now I want to transition to a discussion about loot boxes. These types of things exist in sports games like NBA 2K and Madden and FIFA. They exist in shooters. And there's been a lot of back and forth on the global stage about loot boxes. Belgium completely banned them in 2018. Brazil has recently opened up an investigation into banning them. United States Senator Josh Hawley introduced some legislation about a year ago that is aimed at severely regulating who can buy loot boxes, specifically avoiding people under 18 or children from buying loot boxes. So I want to ask you, given all this in this climate, do you think loot boxes are something that is still good for the video game industry?
Yeah, I do. When well executed, I think it's a win-win for publishers and players alike. for publishers, it's fairly straightforward. It provides, a great additional revenue stream through the sale of the loot boxes and the various in-game tokens and apps. For the players, it allows for, new content or existing content to be refreshed. It adds additional challenges, new levels, new bosses, and it helps to circumvent the old school grind that it used to be, to play games. I mean, a lot of these AAA titles are getting much, much longer, 20, 30, 40 hours or more, especially if they're open world, to complete. So if you're not interested in going the long way with those games, having a loot box option to accelerate the gameplay, I think is great. Where this goes wrong is, the items that you're alluding to, the issues you're alluding to, where the players are taken advantage of under the guise of, you're going to play faster, you're going to get new experiences, when it's just, a straight cash grab. Right.
And the industry has taken some steps in the last year to address this. We're going to put up on the screen some example loot boxes from NBA 2K. Now, one thing that they hadn't done in the past, and that's Take-Two, the publisher of 2K, they had not disclosed the odds of loot boxes in the past, and that's something that you now see. With that you have a 20% chance of pulling a silver NBA player card or something like that. And I think taking steps like that is definitely helping things. But you also had a class action lawsuit that was filed last year by a collection of gamers against Electronic Arts over the FIFA soccer game, and specifically the FIFA Ultimate Team mode, saying that Electronic Arts was using a patented technology called dynamic difficulty adjustment to make the game harder for better players, which in turn forced them to have to buy more and more loot boxes to make their teams better in order to succeed at the game. Now, at the end of the day, Electronic Arts and the gamers settled about 5 months into the litigation, with EA revealing that they were not using this dynamic difficulty adjustment patented technology in any games of theirs that have loot boxes. But given this litigation and the potential that people are out there buying and spending hundreds and $1,000s on loot boxes and not necessarily getting what they want, do you think we're going to see more litigation like this?
I think there's a high possibility, and it's for the reason you just said. If players aren't getting what they want, right? This is, at the end of the day, it's still a community. It's still a customer relationship. So if you have publishers who are presenting the loot boxes in one way, right? You've got fair odds, you've got a good opportunity to receive, whether it's a unique card or a unique token or a unique item in the game, and that's not true, or those odds are greatly diminished. Yes, I think you're going to see, just under classic truth in advertising laws, and claims like that being raised by players who say, I wasn't fully aware that, the odds weren't in my favor. So I think what we would advise publishers to do is to be mindful of those risks, to make sure that they're not overrepresenting what the player and in-game experience will be, and providing a wealth of avenues to educate the players, if it's going to be more challenging or the odds are going to be less favorable than a player would think. I mean, at the end of the day, it's, just be a good corporate citizen.
Right, exactly. Well, that's a good segue into another topic I wanted to discuss, which is addictive behavior in gaming. The World Health Organization recently classified gaming disorder as a medical condition, and we've seen games increase in difficulty and length, as you were mentioning before, exponentially since the early days, making them arguably more addictive. I'll start with an early example in my gaming career, which was the original Legend of Zelda game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I remember coming home from school every day and spending hours trying to complete that game. And that game seems so simple in comparison to games today in terms of length and time that was required. So now you have much more complex games that really put pressure on players to kind of complete the whole thing. And that in some cases, like you were saying, with open world games or even with sports games, can take a commitment of several hours a day, which is unrealistic for a lot of people. So, in terms of children and parents, do you think that we might see more litigation over these types of issues, that publishers are creating a situation that is encouraging gaming disorder within children or young people?
Yeah, similar to our last segment, yes, I see that on the horizon, and certainly a possibility to increase simply because the complexities that you mentioned. I mean, when we think about how much more powerful consoles have become, how much more immersive the experience, it's easy to see, claims, rising up to address those complexities and the immersion, especially if it's targeted, right? I mean, it's one thing if adults are being pulled into a Dark Souls game or, what have you. It's another if these games seem predatory and targeted towards kids. One of the things you didn't touch on that's near and dear in my household are, the in-game achievements that you unlock and that go on virtual leaderboards. I mean, that becomes a compulsion if not, properly checked. So for publishers, I think, and console makers, I think, similar to what we saw, I'm not saying it's a direct analogy, but, what we've seen with, the tobacco industry and some of those claims, I think you can start to see similar claims being raised that it's predatory, it's targeting kids, and, publishers may know, we're not saying that they do, but the types of claims that may be successful are those that show that research was done, that, the engineering was purposeful to keep young gamers, immersed in those environments much longer than is healthy. The final take is mobile gaming. We talk about the power in consoles, but, with Apple and Samsung coming up with more and more powerful processing chips within their mobile devices, we've certainly seen what seems like seemingly innocent puzzlers or platformers that, can easily take hours of your time, if unchecked, to play. And when those mobile devices are in the pockets of a lot of our adolescents, it creates a unique situation where, claims can be raised, addressing how addictive those games can be.
Yeah, we thought Tetris was addictive when the original Game Boy came out, and I mean, you compare that to mobile games today, and it's just a completely different level.
You don't have to find the cartridge, buy the cartridge. I mean, it's coming. You can download it from the App Store, and you're off and running.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last topic I want to hit on is about retailer liability, and I want to talk specifically about a company that originated in your neck of the woods in Minneapolis, and that's Target. Earlier this year, they decided to stop selling trading cards at Target. And the backdrop of this is COVID actually created this weird situation where sports cards have increased in value exponentially, and the demand for new sports cards packs, baseball cards, basketball cards, has gone through the roof, and people are reselling unopened packs on eBay for 5 and 6 times what they go for. And so this was creating a situation at Target and other retailers where you have people lining up at 4 a.m. and battling each other to try to get the 1 or 2 packs that Target got in that particular week. And you also saw it with the console releases, with the PlayStation 5 and with the Xbox One X. Really high demand, difficult to get. I think that situation maybe was handled a little bit differently. A lot of it was done online. But what are your thoughts about how retailers should handle the release of high demand items like video game consoles and like sports cards?
Well, I think retailers are going to be taking a page or borrowing a page from Target's book for no other reason than they want to manage the potential liability that comes with these, exclusive releases and some of the chaos that may surround them. I think you want to obviously protect your customers, but you also have to be mindful of the safety of your employees. And it's just not tenable if you know you're only getting a limited release of, 10, 20, 30 units of an item, and you've got lines around the block, folks who will stampede in the minute the doors open. I mean, it's just not good for anyone. And I think, similar to the last segment, the discussion we had, the knowledge of the retailers prior to the event becomes critical. I mean, if they've seen this frenzy and fervor building in other cities with other releases and yet and still proceed, there's some risk to be had there. We're talking about the gaming, trading cards. I mean, we've also seen it in other industries, ancillary to gaming. I mean, for those who build their own PCs, I mean, GPUs and, the various specialty retailers that sell them, I've pulled into a parking lot or two unbeknownst to me where there's, some NVIDIA release and you've got lines around the block, lawn chairs out there, and you're hoping and praying that you don't get trampled as soon as those doors open. So again, I think all of this to me begets, retailers, publishers, folks just being smart, right? Being good corporate citizens, making sure that they're not taking advantage of that customer relationship to the detriment of their customers, because where there's harm, there's certainly going to be a group looking for recourse.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for your time today, Al. That's about all the time that we have. If people have any questions about any of the legal issues that we've raised today, please drop them into the comments and we will do our best to answer them without providing any real legal advice, of course.
No, thanks for having me, Darius. This has been fun. I look forward to coming back if you'll have me.
I absolutely will. Anytime, Al. Until next time, I'm Darius, and this is Al, and we are Lawyers with Game. We'll see you next time.